Rahul, welcome. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Um, I've been keeping an eye, I guess, across the industry for developments, and recently India sort of been a little bit in the limelight, particularly with their discovery, their recent lithium resource discovery. So I thought it might be a good time to connect and an opportunity to get a much broader sort of snapshot of what's going on in India. And obviously, with respect to your specific expertise, which is in lithium-ion cell R&D. So maybe we can just start off with a brief introduction. How did you come across the industry? Where does your passion lie, and what kind of jobs are you currently, I guess, working on? What's your current experience?
Hello everyone, my name is Rahul Bollini and I'm an expert when it comes to lithium-ion cell manufacturing. And I started my career after I returned to India in 2015. So I studied general energy engineering in Pennsylvania State University in Pennsylvania, US. And that was a pretty much general study where you could explore opportunities in energy, be it generation or storage. And that's I saw it coming that generation is pretty much going to be solar and wind and pretty much a mix of them. And storage is going to be the big the exploration and the lot of R&D and I personally I like research and development kind of activities. That's when I took special interest in that. I spent great amount of time in the college laboratories where my seniors and they were spending a lot of time, although it was not a very big setup and not very uh, a lot of things, but it was a good initial interest. And then I came back to India. Then I worked in a few few companies where I was just exploring what's happening in the country, and it was too early for India as well. And there were a few companies back in the day also who were planning to set up cell manufacturing. I was working with one of them, and that company had a public-private partnership with a renowned laboratory for so I was heading that project from the company side for over 2 years, and that's when I got a more hands-on experience at a bigger cell level. And after that I went to China and worked with few companies at a exercise level. It was not really a long duration thing, but it was more to understand how do gigafactories work differently compared to a laboratory setup, what are the process challenges and all that. And I have been keeping touch with China very regularly. In fact, even next month I'm planning to go. And it has been a good experience so far. And we exchange ideas, what is happening. So and not only that, I work with few Japanese companies as well who are into raw material and all that. So I have a good understanding about what are the raw material updates and what are the new cell engineering techniques and architecture things, and like such as the new things such as the Tesla thing is coming up and all that. I have a good understanding about that. So coming back to my expertise, I am very well versed with raw material characterization, understanding them at a very granular level, and then creating a good process to fabricate uniform and steady output, and activating the cell, which is the formation, and then there is grading, and then testing them at a cell level, at a pack level, in a EV or energy storage. So this is what I've been doing, and I have been supporting a lot of companies in India who are planning to set up cell manufacturing. Unfortunately, no giga scale has come up so far, with an exception of Toshiba plant, which has come up, but that's very secretive and not really spoken about. And that is all Japan, controlled by Japan. There's not much of India thing in there. I suppose it's slightly lower than a gigawatt, but yeah, other than that, there's not much happening here, and a lot of plans, and especially with the push of PLI. I would say 24 you will see a few gigafactories, not one, more than one. And I'm personally working with a few of them, and I have a good understanding about what's happening in the market. So today we can discuss about the Indian ecosystem.
That sounds great. So maybe we can start with, I guess, the market potential that India has. Obviously, it's huge, but has India done enough, in your opinion, to sort of, reach the levels of penetration that you're seeing in different markets in Europe, in North America, and China? is it possible? Obviously, the market potential is huge, but it sounds like, you've already said there isn't really a huge amount of, I guess, development happening yet. So is India coming from too far back?
So specifically talking about EV transition, and yeah, so let's begin with that.
Yeah.
The transition that's happening in the West, or say, let's talk about Australia also, it would be more with respect to cars. And India is not really a car country. Although the car sales have been increasing, India's highest sales, the dependency, the middle class, although the trends have been shifting, people are buying cars these days, but the success rate, the penetration rate is judged by the sales of two-wheelers.
Mhm.
In fact, I own a two-wheeler, I don't own a car, for the simple reason that I live in the second most busiest city in the world, which is, Bangalore, and the traffic is huge. It is very difficult to navigate through the city in a car. Yeah, but then again, the two-wheeler sales. So let's talk about two-wheelers firstly. So
Yeah.
two-wheeler sales have been really good. Um, so I'll give you a rough example. In 2020, the sales of two-wheelers across the whole year was about 25,000 numbers. In 2021, it was 150,000,
Okay.
and in 2022, it was about 600,000. So you can see the annual growth.
Yeah.
So first time it was 5x, and the year after that it was 4x. So the rate of x would come down, but you can see that it is serious. It is taken seriously, and I'll give you a few factors that is driving this.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is if you buy a petrol, and this has been mostly scooters, motorbikes haven't come up. So once the motorbikes are coming in a very big way, that's going to change the equation even further, and it's going to be more aggressive. The numbers are going to be. And in India today, the most of the sales are in the motorbike section, and the scooter is slightly lower, and that is exactly where it's being replaced. So once the motorbike things pick up, and I supposedly they're launching few motorbikes in this year and in 24 as well. But yeah, coming back to the scooters, which is like a moped kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there, if you see this scooters, the petrol scooters are priced close to 100,000 rupees, Indian rupees. Yeah. So electric vehicles, there are a good number of electric vehicles. Say more than 50% of the electric vehicles in the market are priced below 100,000 rupees. So it gives you an advantage that on day one itself,
Okay.
EV is cheaper.
It's interesting.
And second thing is the running cost. If you buy a normal scooter, say the highest selling is Honda Activa, it would give you a range of about 40 to 45 kilometers per liter. So depending on which state you're living in, it would be 90 to 100 rupees where you are living. So that would be close to 2 to 2.2 rupees of operating costs. But when you shift to an EV, the operating cost is less than a rupee. How much less than a rupee depends on how fast you drive, because EVs are very sensitive to the driving profile. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I have an electric scooter which gives me a range of close to 90 kilometers when I'm driving at an eco mode, which is I shouldn't be exceeding more than 40, and even if I try to, the vehicle wouldn't let me drive. And then if I'm driving at a normal this thing with a better acceleration, the mode is called normal mode, I can go all the way to 80 kilometers. Sorry, I can go all the way to 80 kilometer per hour speed.
Yeah.
And obviously, driving in Bangalore, you cannot really drive at 80 kilometer per hour, but you would be accelerating, a lot, braking and accelerating a lot. Even with the best of the regenerative systems in place, I can get a range of 70 to 75. The same battery, the same vehicle. So that's why I told you how much it costs is totally depends on how you drive. And then there's a sports mode in it, which probably gives me about 50 kilometers per charge. And I can drive upwards of 95, close to 95, 96. So it totally depends. So suppose if I were to go on a cross country ride, you know, somewhere outside the city outskirts and all, I would probably, the roads are empty and there are good highways in India which allow you to go above 100 kilometers also. So I'm more than happy to drive at, 95. So in that case, the range would be different. Now coming back to this example, the battery in this vehicle is 3 kilowatt hour to be able to charge with the charger efficiency and, and the battery efficiency and all. I would probably place it at, 3.5 units of, energy consumed. So in 3.5 units, if I charge it at home domestically. So Bangalore is slightly expensive compared to other cities. But even if I were to put it at, 8 rupees per unit of charge. So that would be probably 28 rupees of the complete, the
Yep.
vehicle's charging. And 28 rupees is letting me drive 50 kilometers in sports mode, 70 to 75 kilometers in normal mode, 90 kilometers in eco mode. Take that value against 45 kilometers in 1 liter of petrol, which is, 90 to 100 rupees, depending on which state you're in. And then there are states where the petrol prices are more than 110 rupees.
Okay.
Yeah. So the second thing is I was elaborating that to make you understand about the running cost. The third would be the maintenance. So when you have a petrol scooter, whenever you go for a maintenance, initially the labor and everything is free, and they just charge you for the oil and all that first few services. And then eventually, depending on you do it in the showroom or outside, you are spending, close to 500 to 600 rupees per service. And this is done between 1000 to 1500 kilometers. So let us assume 1500 kilometers also, that is 40 paise, which is 0.4 rupees per kilometer of maintenance,
Mhm.
just the service cost. The consumables obviously would be the same, which is the braking pads,
Yeah.
the brake oil, and the tires. So I'm not going to talk about that. But if you see, these are some of the things. So I can probably save more than 2 rupees per kilometer if I take the normal speed in consideration. And considering that if I'm going to own a scooter for say 50,000 kilometers, I'm saving 1 lakh rupees.
Yeah.
So initially there was a thought that, what would be my resale value, because the battery would die eventually, and then, the battery cost would be higher than the resale value of the vehicle.
Mhm.
And the vehicle, yeah. So eventually people started understanding that my overall savings of owning a vehicle before resale itself is huge. It is in fact as high as a new vehicle, that
Yeah.
I'm good to go. I don't really care about the resale value. And this kind of calculation, Indians are really good at calculating things, savings and all that, because India is a type of country where it's a saving kind of country. Not many people live off credit cards. So when this kind of calculation hits your mind, the next thing you want to do is buy an EV.
Yeah.
So that's exactly how people in my circle are buying. And I'll tell you, the numbers are just going to increase.
Yeah.
That's two-wheeler.
Yeah.
Coming to three-wheelers, there is a competition, healthy competition from CNG and LPG. So if you see in southern part of the country, it has been running on LPG because there's not much CNG promoted. But if you go to the northern parts in the Delhi NCR area, it's all CNG. And CNG already is a wonderful concept. So it's basically, a cleaner fuel where
Mhm.
obviously you'll get CO2 emission, but not CO. So carbon monoxide is a poisonous gas. CO2 is okay. It's
Mhm.
not really that dangerous. And you don't have that SOx, NOx emissions, which are the more dangerous gases that you need to be worried about from a petrol and diesel, internal combustion engine vehicles. So it is already cleaner and things are going well with that. And there is other breed of vehicles which are basically called as e-rickshaw. They have always been electric vehicles. In fact, there was a study published which said that I think 1 million or 1.5 million vehicles are already plying on the roads of India. And there is a challenge of price sensitivity. So these vehicle, the drivers and all, they tend to use lead acid battery. And the third reason, coming to the car. So let's go to the car segment.
Yeah.
So there is always a question mark in the minds of people that what would happen to my car resale, or there are different type of people. There are people who don't really drive a lot, and they have a tendency that, okay, after 5 years I'm going to change my vehicle. What is going to be my resale value? So that is a question. So that is something a little bit slowing down that option.
Okay.
There are second type of people who really use it a lot, and they know for sure the battery is going to die one day. It's life. It's going to reach end of life. And what is going to be my replacement cost? And to be frank, not many people are able to give the accurate. Not many OEMs are able to give accurate replacement costs in the open. There are dealers. Last time I think someone was telling that Tata Nexon, they were told close to 7 lakh rupees. Now, somebody who bought a car on, say, on finance option, they are worried that how do I secure a finance for this 7 lakh rupees battery replacement? Who's going to fund me?
Yeah.
Regardless of how rich or poor people are, people tend to take the advantage of, finance option. And there is some, savings in the income tax also, if you're taking an option and, for an asset and all that, the interest paid for an asset in a particular financial year. So for all these reasons, people tend to take that finance. So that question mark is also there. And the answers for them is not very clear. uh, Maybe for Tata and all it is, but for the other cars which are out in the market, the newer cars that is launching. So I say that this is going to take a while, although the rate of cars being sold. So I'll tell you, about 5,000 cars are being sold in the country per month,
Okay.
and there was a time when it was not even 100, just 2 years ago. So you can see that is 50x.
Okay.
That is huge. So it is huge, but still I'm telling you the exact reasons. Why, like I told, Indians can be very calculative. They can calculate all these things and then come to an analysis that, okay, this is not very clear. I think I should hold off to it. And then there is fierce competition from hybrid vehicles,
Okay.
which can be cleaner than the general, general IC vehicles, for the simple reason that there's a small battery attached. So there are two versions. One is a mild hybrid and the strong hybrid. Strong hybrid is, I've personally verified people getting more than 20 kilometers per liter in a petrol. And that would never happen in a normal ICE vehicle. Even a diesel vehicle wouldn't give them, and petrol vehicle giving them. So there's huge bookings in Toyota and Suzuki vehicles, Maruti Suzuki vehicles.
Mhm.
And that is one more little bit of a competition happening
Yeah.
in the market. And in fact, Japanese have always thought it this way that, let us go to maybe, a plug-in hybrid and then go to EV. And the reason why plug-in hybrid will not work out in India is plug-in hybrids are very expensive. Mild hybrid is okay, it adds little bit cost on your vehicle, say 60,000, 1 lakh, or, slightly above that. And the strong hybrid would cost you maybe 2, 3, 4 lakhs, depending on the model. But once you go to a plug-in hybrid where there's a huge battery sitting, would increase, that would probably, make the vehicle price, 1.5x or 1.7 or maybe 2x for that
Yeah.
matter. And that would actually not be able to sell in India. And India is having a price expectation. There's a price bracket for most cars being sold.
Yeah.
Few years ago, it used to be 8 to 12 lakhs. Now it is, 10 to 15 lakhs, and there are people able to stretch to 16, 17 lakhs also, depending on the city you live in and the cost of living in that particular city. So for example, someone living in Mumbai would be able to shell more money out, because generally also the cost of living over there is very expensive, starting from the rent of your house and all those things. Yeah. So that's how it is. And PHEV cannot be achieved in say 15 or even 18 lakhs.
Yeah. Okay.
That's yeah, that's not possible, because the battery, there's a big battery, and then there's a big petrol engine, and then there's a big EV motor sitting, and a lot of things.
So what
And then
about
there's
the
going to be a compromise in the boot space, and so
that's
that
yeah.
will only work out in a big vehicle, not in a hatchback.
What's the price range for the fully electric vehicles that's been selling in India at the moment then?
Okay, that's a very good question. So today the highest selling is undoubtedly Tata Nexon. It has two variants. One is Tata Nexon EV, the basic version. I think it's also called as Prime now. So I can tell you the price of Bangalore, and taxes in Bangalore can be slightly expensive compared to other states.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it is about the two models. One is 16 lakh rupees,
Yeah.
which is 1.6 million rupees and 1.8 million. These are the two models. And the prices have been slashed recently after Mahindra has launched a vehicle. Probably now the price would be 1.5 and 1.7 million rupees. That is Tata Nexon Basic, and the Prime is upwards of 2 million. It's 2.1 and 2.4 million. The difference is the range.
Yeah.
So the basic Nexon EV has 30.2 kWh battery, and although the claim is on the higher side, I have seen realistic results of 220 kilometers and 210 also in some users. Again, I always say, don't blame the EV, blame your driving pattern. How you drive is how the range comes out. So maybe there could be a proper training that you don't accelerate too much. So basically, how batteries work is if you're adding so much of pulse current, so there's a dip in the voltage, and the dip in the voltage asks for even more higher current to be able to give that kind of wattage. So if there's a particular voltage and then there's a peak current to be able to give you wattage, and then the voltage dips, and to compensate for that, you need to take even higher current. So that's how batteries work, and the losses are huge, and it even kills the battery life, to be frank. So there are certain factors which kill battery life. One is fast charging, and also if you accelerate so much, your battery is going to last lesser than someone who is not. So that is another thing. Um, like I said, EVs can be very sensitive to how you drive and all those. So the realistic range is less. And if you tend to drive in highway, the range drops even further. That's why if you see EVs, how they advertised is the highway range is lesser than the city range, which
Yeah.
is exactly the opposite of how petrol and diesel cars are advertised. Yeah.
You've introduced the three segments, which is your two-wheelers, your three-wheelers, and then your passenger vehicles, I guess. What about how do the lithium-ion batteries and the chemistries vary across those segments? Are you able to give some insights into that?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So let me start with two-wheelers again.
Yeah.
Two-wheelers, you will see a mix of NCA and NMC chemistries, and very few people are using LFP. And the reason being LFP is bulkier and it's heavier. So it is big and heavy.
Okay.
So that's going to increase the gross vehicle weight or gross, weight of the vehicle. So that is one concern. And so general understanding is that people want a battery which is small, light, so that in the given space you can get maximum kilowatt hour of the battery, which would help you get the maximum range. And why are people targeting for maximum range? Because there is something called FAME2 subsidy in India, which stands for faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. So it basically encourages you to localize things. Say 50% of the things has to be localized. So you would probably buy the battery pack from India. You could buy the tires. You could buy the motors, those kind of things. And the whole idea of this is you get a healthy amount for it. So when you have good subsidies, you want to be able to give maximum range and use a big battery as possible. That's not really possible with LFP because the volumetric energy density. So one thing is the weight, which can be overlooked because as long as you are just getting subsidies, you're okay with it. The second thing is the bulk, the density of being bulk, which is called as volumetric energy density. It is measured in terms of watt hour per liter. So if you take a LFP, energy density would be probably 340, 350, or maybe 360, not more than that. And then there are other formats of LFP, which is 33 140, a 15 Ah cell, which can take the way to a 400 watt hour per liter. Now let's compare that with a popular NMC cell being used in the market, which is 2.6 Ah NMC cell in 18650 form factor. So it's a cylindrical 18650 form factor, which weighs about 48 grams. So in that, the volumetric energy density comes close to 600 watt hour per liter. So you can see it is higher. So 340 would probably mean that you need probably 2.9 liters of space to be able to accommodate 1 kWh of battery. And when you see the NMC 2.6 AH, which is close to 600 watt hour per liter, it would mean that you need 1.66 liters of space to be able to accommodate 1 kilowatt hour of battery.
Here is that volumetrically, to get the same level of energy, you need a much bigger space using the LFP, right? So
Yes.
and so it's not ideal, therefore, for your smaller vehicles, right? But
Yes.
then
So
what about from a cost perspective?
yes. So it's not like it's not ideal. Now that there is fame to subsidy being given to each vehicle, people would like to take maximum of it. So if you were to use LFP and it being bulkier, you cannot use maximum of the batteries, and which would lead to lesser subsidy being given to you, and also lesser range, and it becomes hard to sell in the market.
Mhm.
So, but LFP is cheaper, it is safer,
Mhm.
its ability to catch fire is very, very low compared to NMC and NCA. And the third thing is it lasts longer. Its cycle life is on an average, depending on what you're using, it can be, 50% to 100% higher than NMC.
Yeah.
And I was talking about NCA. So I think I covered LFP and then NMC. NCA is the most expensive, but they also tend to be the lightest and the smallest of the battery. So if you take an example of a 5AH cell made by LG, which tends to be about 70 grams. So that comes out to be 250 watt hour per kg, which is the highest. LFP maxes out at 160 and 170, although the new things have come up. So I'm personally working with a client where we are able to achieve 186 watt hour per kg. But yeah, it's nowhere close to 250, So NCA tends to be lighter, but again, like I said, weight is not the major concern, it's the volume. And its dimension being 21700 cylindrical, its volumetric energy density is close to 700 watt hour per liter,
Mhm.
which tends to be the highest compared to 340, 350, 360 of LFP, 600 in NMC,
Mhm.
2.6 AH. There are other variants of NMC also. NMC 811 would probably get you close to 700,
Mhm.
but NCA takes the lead.
Okay.
And there are premium scooter companies who are in a higher price bracket. They tend to use NCA.
Okay.
And since NCA is expensive, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody wants to use it. So since premium vehicles are already expensive, they are able to absorb that cost. And and
Yeah.
another thing is NCA batteries. If you were to rank the safety aspect, LFP is the safest, followed by NMC, followed by NCA.
Okay.
So why do people still use an NCA? Volumetric energy density. That's the only answer I can give you. And since its safety is on the lower side, you will have to heavily compensate with good thermal management, which again increases the cost of making a battery pack. So when you're assembling cells, you have to have a really good thermal management system in place. That is one thing. Would be using it. So my understanding is once FAME subsidy is removed eventually, because China has recently removed all the subsidies on the vehicles. India will also do that when they feel that okay, there is a healthy competition in the market between IC and EV. Then they feel that okay, no more governmental push is required.
Mhm.
And that is exactly when NCA will slowly disappear from the market, because they OEMs will no longer be able to afford that. So I'll give you a simple example. If NCA batteries didn't have the subsidy, the scooters would cost probably close to 200,000 rupees, 2 lakh rupees. And that's not a price bracket any Indian would be interested in masses. Maybe few of them, but not all of them. Compare that with 1 lakh rupees, 100,000 rupees of Honda Activa. That's not going to happen. So there's going to be a major shift in the market dynamics and the battery being used. FP now, a lot of companies are redesigning their chassis and the battery bucket to be able to accommodate a higher volume of battery. That is one thing.
Maybe we can continue. I think you started talking about LFP a little bit more, but what are
Are
you seeing any developments in that space that could change the game a little bit? So, I'm hearing a lot, or at least
Yes.
trying to follow
So
development.
yeah, so let me finish that topic.
Yeah.
So I was telling you, NMC has been the go-to market choice. And there's been a shift from that to LFP with the commitment from OEMs to bring down the price, and they have been redesigning the chassis and the battery bucket to be able to accommodate a bigger battery. And all this is with the respect to bring down the price. And second thing is to be able to give a higher life to their battery, because clearly LFP gives anywhere between 50 to 100% of the more life. But LFP has other challenges also. Its voltage is so flat, SOC estimation becomes really challenging. So there are different methods that are being worked out. So there's a lot of good amount of R&D happening in the country. People are working on all that at a BMS level and all those things, and data analytics level and all those things. Yeah, but coming back to this, the way I see it, LFP is gaining market share because one thing is FAME subsidy is going to go away one day, and it'll be neck to neck the market competition, and LFP can only achieve that. Yeah, and you were asking about what are the
Well, I'm just trying
what
to
is
work
that?
out then, obviously, they're going to, they push the limits on LFP technology in a way, in terms of what it can achieve. But what about things like LFMP, introduction of manganese into the chemistry? Are you working in that space, or have you hearing anything about if
Yes, yes.
yeah,
I'll tell you about that.
yeah.
So every cathode material has a roadmap. So basically, whenever we talk about cell, it's mostly about the cathode. Although we change the separator, we change the electrolyte, we change the additives in electrolyte, we change the way the separator is made, be it dry, coated, wet, and all those things. There's a lot of things happening. Probably I'll share my article links with you, or maybe you can share it with the podcast viewers where they can study about all the materials.
Okay.
I've written 4 articles about cathode, anode, electrolyte, and separator. But generally, when you say LFP, LMFP, and all, it's basically a cathode. So let me talk about that today. Yeah. Um, so basically, firstly, it is lithium manganese phosphate where you're introducing iron. It is not lithium iron phosphate where you're introducing manganese. That's how it is. And manganese on its own is not stable. To increase the stability, we are adding iron in it. And secondly, why it is not stable? It has a dissolution issue. So with cycling and all that, there'll come a time when the manganese is there. It experiences dissolution. And secondly, like I was saying, every material has a roadmap. Every cell manufacturer has a roadmap. So how it works is basically NMC. Earlier it was NMC 111, and then it went to NMC 442, and then it went to 532, then it went to 622, then it came to 811. So what do I mean by the numbers is basically the parts of that metals being used while making a precursor. So it's at a precursor level. And yeah, and NC also, if you see initially the first generation NCA was pretty much, although it was high, it has always been nickel rich. It was probably 80% of nickel. Now the newer generation, what Tesla is using, it has reached close to 90%. And the whole idea is to kick out cobalt because nobody likes cobalt. And why? Because cobalt is available only in one country and it's not accessible to everybody. But there's one thing, you can never throw cobalt out for the simple reason of the stability that it brings. So I'll give you a simple example. If you see cell phones have evolved so much and you're able to fast charge, especially there's a lot of fast charging mobile phones come. But OnePlus specifically, they're able to give you really fast charging. All these are LCO batteries. So if you see the ratio of nickel, manganese, cobalt, it's basically only cobalt. There's no nickel, no manganese. So all the stability comes from cobalt. Second thing is cobalt is expensive. It's really expensive compared to the other two metals. And yeah, third thing is there's a lot of sustainability and questions raised about how it is mined, how it is processed, and traceability and all those things. So it's more about traceability rather than sustainability. But yeah, so there's a lot of there's talk of child labor and all that. And it, although I cannot comment on that, but I'll tell you it is at some extent it can be really unethical, I would say. And coming back to this, cobalt is something people want to kick away. in NMC. That's exactly why more of nickel is taking over, and in NMC and NCA also. Now coming to LFP, that's the question that you were asking. So LFP, like I told, the newer material would be LMFP, lithium manganese iron phosphate. So the advantages, see, there has to be some advantage when you're shifting to a material. And the first advantage people look at is in terms of watt hour per kg and watt hour per liter. And why is that of concern? Because everybody wants a bigger battery in a given space. That is a volumetric density. Second thing is everybody wants to use less materials to be able to make a battery which can hold 1 kWh. Why is that? Because if less materials would mean it is actually, uh, it's development basically. So you're having less of the dead weight and all those things. Yeah. And that is something. And LMFP has various, again, like LFP, there is a theoretical capacity of 170 mAh per gram at a specific capacity of the material at a material level. And LMFP is also similar. Advantage would be you can boost up the voltage. And the voltage boost would directly depend on the ratio of manganese that is. And there has to be a healthy mix of iron to be able to maintain that stability. Or else I told you there's a manganese dissolution issue. And the major another problem is the voltage. If you see the voltage of LFP, if you see NMC, it is like a falling kind of thing. If you observe the voltage of LMFP, it is neither flat, it is neither like NMC. It is a mix of two. So, and I will go on to say it has like a double dip. It is basically falling. It is little bit flat and then falls again, and then it's flat and again falls. So you see the voltage dip is not very stable. And that becomes really difficult to track the SOC based on voltage measurement. Not only that, once the voltage dips, the current taken from the battery also rises to be able to give that kind of wattage. So there are some initial challenges. So I'm working with a client particularly to make that material like a very stable kind of voltage. So in fact, one of the company has developed a material which is pretty much a falling kind of thing. But yeah, there's a long way to go about that, but definitely that is going to be the future of LFP, because LFP today, I can tell you, so there's one more client that I was working with. We achieved 186, and with the thinnest of the current collectors, we could go 190 watt hour per kg, but not more than that. We can probably push to 200 also, and then we could probably reduce the current collectors, but the material is not going to improve. It's going to be the same 170 mAh per gram specific capacity theoretically. You cannot push the theoretical limit, and as you know, you will not get whatever is theory. So you probably max out at 160, 163, 164, 165, not more than that. So how a cell is made is basically you need to take so and so many grams of the material, and then to be able to achieve a required AH. And that material is going to be fixed. Maybe you can use ultra high viscosity binder, which is basically, binder is a dead weight which is placed between the the particles of the cathode. Maybe you can reduce that, and that will help you slightly, but the binder percentage is single digit, so that's not going to help you a lot. And then if you go with ultra high viscosity binders, the mixing time of it in the NMP solvent actually increases. So your mixer, you will need more of your mixers. You will have to get that. So there's a lot of things happening at this level, although it can be done. But again, what matters is it comes at a cost. Will your customer pay that kind of cost? And India being a price sensitive country, and although it's a big country with masses of orders that can come if someone sets up a cell manufacturing, but they will have to, this cell manufacturing company, whoever comes up, will have to keep the price in check, so that after the import duty that is being paid for a cell which is coming from China or Korea, they're able to match that. Or probably maybe there's a 1-2 months of holding time, or you are basically paying to a vendor in China, and then your goods are shipped. There's some transit time. There is some cost of borrowing, or that lending that money and all that. Maybe you can add that as well. After that, if you're able to match the price also, I think it should work out. But if you are expensive by 10-15%, it is going to be very expensive. that brings me to the next question, that someone has to consider setting up raw material manufacturing in India. And I can link you this raw material manufacturing all the way to the mine. The manufacturer is not interested in dealing with a mining company. They have no business with that. There'll be a lot of intermediate processing that's happening. Suppose I'll give you an example, like XYZ company forward and does the processing of the ores. The ores is basically the rocks, and there's, how the content of any mines are determined is the amount of lithium oxide it contains. Generally, it is 1 to 2% of the lithium oxide content. And you have to convert it to lithium hydroxide or lithium carbonate with a purity of 99.5% minimum. Although, the cathode manufacturers really like 99.9%. But getting that consistency of 99.9, which can fetch you a premium, can be challenging and can take some time for any new company entering. So someone from India were to enter, they would have that challenge. Maybe 99.5, which is technically a battery grade, but the cathode buyer, the cathode processing companies really prefer 99.9%. So I have a first-hand experience of dealing with these companies in the past. I visited these companies also and seen what happens. Yeah, that is one. Second thing is, you will have to eliminate the impurities. There are some impurities which are okay, and then there are some impurities which are a no-go. You cannot actually allow them. And if that is part of it, your whole your whole batch is going to be rejected, because that can actually cause issues for the cathode processing company. So what happens is, the next process would be, suppose there's a lithium carbonate which is going to a company who is making cathode manufacturing. So the cathode manufacturer would probably buy iron phosphate from the market. And iron phosphate, although they can also make it, initially they would prefer that there will be a processing company where iron phosphate would come from a source and lithium carbonate would come from another source, and they would make the lithium iron phosphate. Now the question is, iron phosphate is coming from a source. They have to have a setup to be able to combine iron oxide and phosphoric acid. And phosphoric acid is also of concern because we don't have much phosphorus mines in our country. Although we do, not a lot, not in such manners that it can actually support the blooming, the EV market. Considering everybody shifts, or most of them shift to LFP, and so phosphoric acid is already used in the fertilizer market in a very big way. There's good premiums involved in it. So one way to shift things to your market, to your advantage, would be paying premiums, but being paid in the fertilizer industry. So that is one challenge that I see. Iron oxide easily available. See, India has lots of iron. We are one of the top 5 manufacturers of iron. So I don't see any issues there. So I see issue of the purity to be achieved in the carbonate, and to eliminate impurities and phosphoric acid. And then once the cathode manufacturer is able to source iron phosphate and lithium carbonate, then processing that is not a very difficult task. It's basically a matter of having a setup, and probably having it close to a few cell manufacturing companies. And I have 15 to 20 companies who are planning cell manufacturing in India, and most of them are planning in the southern part of India. It's between the Bangalore and Chennai belt. So if someone were to set up a cathode manufacturing between that, they could cater as an ancillary to all of these companies. So I don't see a challenge making cathode, and it's a very mature, like you were also saying that there's not much evolution or technological updates happening at the cathode, LFP cathode. So I don't see that as a challenge, and I don't see cell manufacturing as a challenge. I see this challenges that I highlighted, from the mine to be able to come to the cathode manufacturing. Yeah. And third thing, lithium carbonate prices were at an all-time high few months ago. They reached almost $80 per kg. They have come down. So if someone were to enter now, they can actually cash in and make a huge amount of money, because the next thing in a year, probably it came down to single digit. It will not, obviously, it'll take some time. But I'll tell you, 2 years ago, it used to be $6. It went all the way to $80. What makes you think that it'll not come back? Maybe not really to 6, maybe $20 also. But now is the time if someone were to enter in this, field. So there's really good opportunity over there.
One thing that's also very much overlooked is just how long it takes to get from a resource into production, which sort of comes into my next question, because it can take 10 years, 15 years. So, India clearly still has to get a hold of its raw material supply chain. So what do you see automakers, or you say maybe a cathode manufacturer will set up? What are they doing to try beyond what's already available in India? Are you seeing them make strong initiatives to try and collaborate with existing mining companies or development companies to secure their supply chains, or are they being too lazy about it?
So as of today, I know of personally 4 companies, cathode manufacturing companies, who are planning. Although the plans are not for this year, everything is at a lab level now. But I
Mhm.
know of 4 serious companies, and I have been discussing and tracking them for quite some time, and much before the lithium discovery in India. So I can
Mhm.
tell you that by then they had actually inked agreements with Argentina, Australia, and all those countries who have brines and ores and all those things.
Mhm.
Now, how they react and how they shift and how they actually identify a possible mining company, maybe push a mining company, or maybe they get to know that the mining company is actually looking at it, and then I need to initiate. So there are some gaps between that. If you understand what I'm trying to say,
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
some gaps because already there are ink packs, already things are done. So someone has to actually come out in the open, in the media, and actually say that I'm going to take over this mines, and then you can maybe have some healthy discussions between them and the cathode manufacturers. One thing is obvious: it is a business for cathode manufacturer, not for cell. It has nothing to do with cell, but it can be something to do with the cell if the cell manufacturer goes for a backward integration to set
Mhm.
up a cathode manufacturing plant. That is
Mhm.
one thing. And second thing, I always say that, graphite has been overlooked for quite
Mhm.
some time. And uh, and not just me. In fact, the global experts are predicting this year or next year there's going to be serious shortage of graphite. It's not that we don't have graphite, we don't have enough processing, companies who are processing graphite to the
Yeah.
required battery grade level. And and not just that, even the Electrolyte and all that, although okay, Electrolyte is directly linked to the lithium hydroxide salt, which will be linked one or the other way to the cathode. But coming to separator, there are companies who are scaling up big. I'm talking to few separator companies. I can see their roadmaps. They are well in sync. They are all okay. But I really see a bottleneck of graphite processing companies. And in fact, in India also, I was talking to I think 2 companies so far, and they are also showing healthy interest. But at a global level, I'm seeing that nobody is really discussing about graphite.
Yeah, it's true.
It is surprising. Yeah. And in fact, the other day I was talking to one of my friend. He sits in Vietnam. He was also telling that manganese has also been taken very lightly. With the introduction of, and I was telling him that I agree with him because when LMFP takes over, there's going to be a lot of manganese demand. And then there are other versions also. There's NMC, which will be blended with LMO, lithium manganese oxide. So there also there'll be a lot of manganese demand. And then there is one more material, cathode material called LNMO. So it could be various parts of nickel and manganese, although the most popular one is Li5 and Mn 1.5. So it's basically zero point 0.5 and 1.5 ratio. So 1:3 you can say.
Mhm.
And then yeah, so and then it's a tetroxide. So that's what it is. And manganese is also looked it's taken lightly. So I see that lithium carbonate is the least of the worries. The Tesla is getting into mining, General Motors is getting into mining, and a lot of discovery in India as well. So these are also some things I feel that the industry must be taking it seriously.
Okay. Maybe we can finish up just on your thoughts, your high-level thoughts on some of the things that might be significant developments over the next few years. I know you've done a lot of work, obviously, in lithium-ion battery space, but you are taking a look, I believe, also at sodium ion technology. So is that something that is worth mentioning at this stage? Is there anything else that we should be keeping
Sure,
an eye?
sure.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, lithium-ion batteries, there were many people working before 1991 also when it was commercialized. What mattered is you have to start with one stable cathode, and then came NCA in close to 1999, and then others started following up and all that. then NMC and all these people. Yeah. But today, the biggest challenge I see in sodium ion is that too many cathodes. And every company that is out there is having their own personal preference. So somebody likes Prussian blue and somebody likes Prussian white. And the other day I was just talking to somebody that Prussian white is very expensive. Don't even bother. It's not going to work out. I mean, the sample costs $1,000 per kg.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and so it's not going to work out. Yeah, and then there is a VFM, and then there is NANMC 111, NANMC, 811, NANMC 622. So there's just so many of them, and they got all this. So if you see the NMC 811, 111, and 622, these are all bases taken from lithium ion. So lithium ion has actually created a confusion in the sodium ion. And if you were to simply chase the best of the energy density material out there, you could risk losing the C rate cycling and the cycle life and the fast charging, which is obviously the C rate, and then the safety aspect and all those things. So these are all some of the confusion that I'm seeing. Although there's a gigafactory coming up in China, which is I think expected to be up and running in the next 12 months. Others are still at a lab level and still cycling at, I have seen companies cycling at 0.2 C or 0.3 C. Whereas NMC and all these people, they are able to give you a max continuous discharge of 2C and 3C. Although and sodium ion can also give you that kind of thing, but nobody is there yet. So it comes with you will have to take all this data with a pinch of salt. And yes, basically how sodium ion works is you are replacing lithium carbonate with sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is 30 cents per kg. Compare that with $60 of lithium carbonate. But what are the downsides? It's heavier, it's bulkier, and good luck putting that in a two-wheeler already, which is struggling to put LFP. And volumetric energy density is never going to allow it to come into EVs. And it's never about gravimetric energy density. It's always about volumetric. See, Tata Nexon is a 1.4 ton vehicle. It doesn't care if it's 200 kgs more.
Yeah.
So it's not about the weight. It's about how much I'm able to fit in a given space to be able to give the range. And then, yes, obviously costing. And as of today, sodium ion raw materials are expensive compared to lithium ion batteries for the simple reason that they are not mass produced. So someone has to take up an initiative to be able to mass produce them. And yes, theoretically, it has to be cheaper.
So what do you see then are the practical applications of sodium ion batteries?
Definitely places where the space does not matter. First would be energy storage. So if I were using a lead acid battery at home for home, home energy storage kind of thing, I would probably consider a sodium ion battery because I'm already with lead acid battery. Or maybe, a three-wheeler e-rickshaw, which has ample space below the driver's seat, which can easily accommodate LFP and still be having more space. I wouldn't mind putting a sodium ion. But good luck putting that in two-wheeler or four-wheeler. Not happening, never happening. And the C rate and the acceleration that you want, it cannot give you with today's material. So I say that, to be able to get a matured product for high-speed vehicle, that's not happening in this decade. And in fact, when I'm following up with these companies, people are not even targeting high-speed vehicles. They say, at max, I would go with low-speed vehicles. The low-speed vehicles are basically, 25 kilometer per hour, which is, the e-rickshaw, the three-wheeler that I'm talking about, who are using lead acid. And then there is a good number of two-wheeler sales happening in the low speed. They don't have any FAME 2 subsidy and all that. So that market itself is different.
Yeah.
And one thing is obvious, lithium-ion batteries are here to stay. They're never disappearing. They will lose market share. They will get healthy competition, but they are here to stay. As simple as that. So this is a very common question people keep asking me. I tell them that firstly, sodium ion is actually having a different kind of base where it would fit in. And lithium ion batteries are only getting lighter and, smaller.
Yeah.
And sodium ion batteries first have to be able to achieve that C rate of cycling, which is the fast charging capability and the ability to give you high power and the peak pulse current and all those things. So not anytime soon, but it's a very good initiative. We should have alternatives. We should never let one thing dominate. It's a very bad idea. And there's a lot of talk about the lithium mines getting over. It's too early to comment on that. depends on how good you are at recycling. And one good thing about India, I can see the healthy number of companies, good number of companies that are taking up seriously. They're taking up recycling very seriously, even before the cell manufacturing is coming.
Okay.
Because India is having a lot of battery pack companies. Last time I was doing analysis with a research company, we found out there are more than 500 battery pack assembly companies in the country. But lead acid is about 1,500. So India, everybody can survive. And I will tell you one thing about lead acid battery, that's never going to go. It's many decades old technology that will have its market. Lithium-ion battery will have its market. And when sodium ion, when it's ready, that will have its own market. I say that everybody is welcome to India. Don't worry about something going away or disappearing. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The country is big. The opportunities are big. The market is big. So
Very
that's my
interesting.
say.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
It's gonna, I appreciate your insights. So maybe we can finish up with a question that I like to ask everybody. Well, two questions. The first question is, what's one thing that really excites you at the moment? And then the second question is, what's something that makes you scared or nervous? And it can be obviously about the topic that we're talking about, or it could be anything generally.
Excitement, I'll tell you today, I see any cell in India, all of them say made in China. So I'm looking for a day when all the cells in India say made in India. That is my excitement. That's my dream also. And scare, I would say that, this upcoming companies, they understand the market really well so that they are able to fit in the price bracket. Because I'll tell you the example of solar. Although India has a lot of solar module manufacturers, there's a healthy amount of imports happening. And why is that? For the simple reason that they're cheaper. And I don't want to comment more on that, but I'm just telling you that, people can tend to import if things are not fitting in their price bracket, because I understand they want to be able to give a good price product to their end customer. And just because they're using maybe an Indian made product, which is increasing their final price and making them lose to their competitor, that's their nightmare. So I'm scared that will we be able to achieve that kind of pricing strategy. Obviously, you can add the import duty price and all those, and people who will be importing raw materials today, they don't have any duty. Although if you import the cells, duty will be there. So the cell manufacturers raw material is all duty free as of now for next, I think, for few years. But yeah, so the pricing strategy is something that really scares me. And in fact, my customers that I'm working with, we are really optimizing at a granular level, the raw material selection level, to be able to match that price. So I'm aware of the price of the Chinese cells which are coming. Obviously, Korean cells are very expensive, and Indian companies can easily match that. And another thing is Korea doesn't make LFP. At least they're not able to make it in a big scale. Although SK Innovation is planning in very big way, after the patents have expired now in 23. But as of today, there's no LFP cell coming from Korea to India. So LFP, I always take the Chinese benchmark. And NMC, if NMC, NCA, if the technology is really good, then I say that, okay, maybe we can compare with the Korean prices. Yeah, so that is two things, good and bad. Yeah.
Definitely, I think the work that you're doing in the space is really exciting and no doubt contributing to that being a reality. So, really appreciate your time and very keen to, if you can share your links to the articles that you've written. And yeah, thank you for sharing your knowledge. I think it'll be very useful to everyone who's had a chance to listen to this. So thank you, Rahul.
I will email you the links. Thank you. Thank you, Dhanush. Thank you.